The biting New Mexico wine screamed through the junipers, carrying the sharp tang of blood and the faint gasps of someone fighting for life in the dust. Jack Harlan snapped awake in his remote cabin, his calloused hand grabbing the old Remington revolver from under his pillow. Through the grimy window, he spotted Hera's crumpled form in faded denim and leather, staggering across the rocky ground like a specter from his darkest regrets. When she collapsed at his doorstep, her auburn hair fanning out like rust against the red earth, he couldn't know this instant would pit the forgiveness he'd chased for 7 years against a passion that could unravel him completely. But when those hazel eyes flickered open and met his, Jack Harlan saw his own reckoning gazing back. Those were eyes like Cartwright's the eyes of his sworn enemy. What happens when rescuing a stranger means courting your own destruction? And where are you tuning in from this evening? The December gusts in the New Mexico highlands don't show mercy, and they sure don't erase old wounds. Neither did Jack Harlan, though he'd tried like hell. His cabin perched like a forgotten relic on a mountainside, 50 miles west of Santa Fe, where the world dropped off and a man's history could finally fade her, so he'd hoped. She was barely alive when he hauled her inside, her skin cold as river stone, lips cracked from the chill. The knife wound in her side had soaked through her trail-worn jacket, sturdy fabric that screamed money from some upscale outfitter in Albuquerque. This wasn't a lost hiker caught in a flash storm. Jack had patched enough injuries in his time to keep steady, even when the patient was a woman who looked like she'd wandered off a city billboard. As he sliced away the bloodied cloth, exposing skin that had never seen real hardship, she stirred. "Please." Her voice came out refined, almost polished, with an edge of raw fear that twisted his gut. "They're after me. They'll kill us both if they catch up." "Who's after you?" Jack kept his tone, even as he pressed a clean rag to the gash. Her eyes opened wide, those piercing hazel eyes that would plague him, and she murmured, "I can't say. But if you've got any decency left, hide me." She passed out again, leaving Jack with a storm of questions heavier than the packs he'd carried in his outlaw days. As he stitched her up and draped her in his spare quilt, he felt destiny had kicked in his door, dressed in mystery and trouble he didn't need. When she came 4 days later, she called herself Laura Mills. It was bullshit. Of course, everything about her screamed deception, except the way she stared at him like he was her last shot at hope. "You pulled me back from the edge," she said, propping herself up in his bed, the quilt slipping to show the elegant line of her neck. "I don't know how to thank a man for that." Jack averted his gaze, fiddling with a pot of stew that didn't need stirring. "No thanks necessary. Heal up and hit the road. This ain't no spot for refined types." But she didn't leave. Laura Mills, or whoever she truly was, had a touch that turned his rough shack into something resembling a home. She whipped up meals that reminded him food could taste like more than survival chili with spices he'd forgotten existed, biscuits light as clouds. She darned his shirts with precise stitches that mesmerized him. In the evenings, she'd recite lines from a tattered novel she'd salvaged from her saddlebag. "Hear this, Mr. Harlan," she said one night, her voice warm by the fire's glow. "The road not taken looks real good in hindsight, but it's the one you pick that defines you." Robert Frost. Jack paused, his knife hovering over the leather strap he was repairing. "Yeah, I know it. Read it back in the day." She looked up, intrigued. "Before what?" That was his cue to send her packing. Instead, he spilled about the books from his youth, the life before he turned recluse with stains on his soul and shadows in his sleep. She listened like his stories were gold, making him feel visible for the first time in years. It was risky, this spark of connection more lethal than any showdown he'd survived. "You're different from most men," she whispered, her eyes tracing his face in a way that ignited forgotten fires in his chest. "Good, different, or bad?" Jack asked, his heart pounding. She smollate a grin that could thaw the peaks. "Haven't figured that out yet." But Jack had. He was tumoring headlong for a woman whose real name was a mystery, and every gut instinct screamed loving her would torch them both. He was dead right. The locket slipped from her pocket like a guilty secret. Jack scooped it up, twisting the silver chain in the lamplight. Engraved inside, E. Cartwright, 1890. E. Cartwright, the name slammed into him like a freight train, draining the air from his lungs. It clicked. The fancy gear, the educated drawl, those damn hazel eyes that invaded his thoughts day and night. "You planned on cluing me in sometime, right, Emma?" he said, his voice gravelly. She froze in the doorway, fresh from tending the horses, dust still clinging to her boots. Color flooded her cheeks as she eyed the locket. "Jack, don't feed me more lies. I've swallowed enough for a lifetime." She slumped into the chair opposite, hands shaking as she took the locket. When their fingers brushed, a spark jumped between them, electric even in betrayal. "I didn't know it was you at first. I was fleeing, bleeding out, and you saved me." "From what?" The tale poured out in jagged shards, each one slicing deeper. Reginald Voss, the oil tycoon who'd bartered for her like livestock. The engagement sealed 2 empires, crushing every small rancher from Taos to Tucson. Her frantic dash west toward Mexico for escape ended with a blade in her side from her father's hired blades. "He's sunk millions into our merger," she said, tears carving paths down her face. "If I bail, he'll ruin my dad's spread. Every hand, every family relying on us three will lose it all because of my rebellion." Jack should have felt justified. This was Cartwright's kin, his foe's blood, weeping in his home about messes not his to fix. But he saw only a woman caged by forces beyond her, mirroring his own trap from one fatal clash that rewired his world. "Your brother," he said softly. "Danny, it wasn't cold-blooded. Fair fight, but he was green and loaded." Her whisper cut in. "I know. You're no monster like Dad painted. If you were, I'd be coyote bait by now." If he were smart, he'd toss her out. But as she stood by the window, moonlight etching her silhouette, something fierce stirred. "Some folks are wired to shatter everything," she said, shrugging off old grief. The quiet pulled taut like a bowstring. "So what's next?" Jack asked. "We both know this road leads nowhere good." Emma turned, her eyes blazing with wild hope. "What if it does? What if we bolt together? Running wouldn't rewrite their sins, wouldn't undo what he'd done to her kin. Doesn't fix the past, Emma. Doesn't erase the blood." "Maybe not." She stepped nearer, her scent of sage and warmth filling the air. "But it could let us build something real." When she took his hand, he held on. When she leaned in, he didn't retreat. And when her lips met his, parted in silent plea, Jack Harlan surrendered to a sin that felt like salvation. The kiss started gently, exploratory. Then she sighed a sound of yield, and it turned fierce. His arms circled her waist, drawing her close as she molded against him. She tasted like freedom and fire, like all he'd buried deep. "This is insane," he murmured against her mouth. "Then let's go crazy," she replied, smiling in the firelight. Outside, the wind wailed protests, but they were deaf to it. Nights in the high desert drag on eternally, black and biting, forcing a man to dwell on his failures. But that night, in Emma Cartwright's embrace, Jack found heat that scorched away ancient regrets. She approached like a vision, her cotton shift glowing in the embers as she crossed him. "You sure?" His voice rasped with want and wariness. "Never sure," she said, easing onto the bed. "I'm done letting fear call the shots." Her fingers mapped the scar on his armor relic from his sheriff days, and his skin ignited under her touch. "Tell me the story," she whispered. "Bandit raid in El Paso, 85. Thought he had the drop on me." His breath hitched as her lips followed. "And this?" Her hand slid lower to a faded knife mark. "Bar brawl. Can't recall the spark." He captured her hand, kissing it. "Emma, you don't." "I do." She sealed his doubts with a kiss laced with urgency. "I want every tale your scars tell. I want to etch new ones." She was stunning the arch of her back in the light, her hair cascading like copper waves, the soft moans when his lips grazed her skin. But it was her gaze, seeing him as a whole, that broke him. When she rose beneath him, nails biting his back, he was adrift. When she breathed his name like a vow, he was anchored. Later, entwined in linens and starlight, her head on his chest, Jack grasped love, strikes unbidden fears. Ruinous, unstoppable. "What are you pondering?" she asked, voice sleepy. "That I'm an idiot." "What?" "Falling for a woman I can't keep." She lifted her head, eyes earnest. "What if you already have? What if love bends the rules?" Before he could respond, coyotes howled distant warnings, then closer, the thud of boots. Emma stiffened. "They've tracked me." Jack snatched his gun. Peace shattered like brittle clay. "How many?" 15 at least. She dressed swiftly. Dad doesn't skimp. Through the slats, lanterns bobbed like angry spirits. Footsteps crunched, leather creaking prose, zeroing in like vultures. The back trail, Jack urged, loading rounds. "No." Emma's tone was steel. "I won't flee while you fight." "Emma." A voice thundered, laced with command. "I know you're holed up with that scum. Send her out. Harlan, and I'll make your end quick." Benjamin Cartwright had arrived, mob in tow. Jack peeked. 18 gunslingers ring the cabin, pros with odds in their favor. "Last warning," Cartwright bellowed. Emma joined him at the window. "Dad," she shouted, "I'm here, but I'm no one's property." Silence fell, heavier than lead. Then Cartwright's reply, "I see. Always too stubborn, girl. But you'll learn. Voss wants his bride, and he'll damn well have her." Jack knew then, no clean exit. Some battles pick you, and guarding love means gambling all. He kissed her fiercely, tasting salt and steel. "Whatever goes down, loving you is worth the ride." Outside, shadows closed. Inside, foes turned allies braced for hell. Dawn bled slowly over the New Mexico ridges, staining the dusty yard in crimson and amber. 18 hardened men encircled the cabin, steam rising from their breath, rifles locked on the door. At the heart sat Benjamin Cartwright on a massive bay horsey, a man of 62, whose glare could cow empires, which he pretty much ruled. "Emma," his voice boomed with habitual dominance. "Enough games with this murderer. Come home." The door creaked open. Jack emerged first, hands up but poised, eyes sweeping the threats like old times. Emma followed, chin high despite quivering fists. "Hello, Dad," she said, words ringing clear. Benjamin's expression flickered, paternal, concern warring with fury then hardened. "You look worn. This is what dallying with killers brings." "This is freedom," Emma shot back. "Something you'd never get." "Freedom?" Benjamin's laugh was barren. "You call shacking up with your brother's slayer freedom? You call gutting our legacy freedom?" "Danny's death was square," she insisted. "And you know it." "What I know," Benjamin hissed, "is that Voss poured $3 million into our deal. Cash he wants repaid via your vows. Walk away, and he bankrupts us all, every worker from here to Phoenix. Is that your freedom? Watching folks starve for your whims." The barb landed. Emma paled, doubt creeping as old duties clawed back. A second rider advanced. Reginald Voss, 65, paunchy but sharp-eyed as a hawk. "There's an out," he said. "Wed me clean, and I'll sweeten the pot. Your dad retains half his holdings. Job stay put. Refuse." He shrugged. "Contracts bite back." Emma wavered, the crush of guilt evident. Jack boiled over. "She's not yours to claim." 18 barrels swung his way, hammers cocking like thunder. "You don't factor, Harlan," Benjamin snarled. "Be grateful I'm letting you breathe." "Maybe," Jack said coolly. "But how many of yours bite the dust for your ego?" Tension coiled, violence a breath away. Then Emma stepped forward. "Hold it," shouted her father, Voss, then Jack. "I've got a deal." "Emma." "No," Jack began. "Shut up and hear me." Her voice cracked with authority, transforming her into a force. She claimed the yard's center, every gaze riveted regal, daunting, unyielding. "Mr. Voss," she said, "you crave Cartwright land and leverage. What if I deliver without the wedding that neither wants?" Voss leaned in, hooked. "Talk. A straight merger, 55 to 45 your favor. Full access to our wells and routes, plus a payout for the hassle. And the funds." Voss pressed. "Dead girls don't pay." Emma's smile was her father sharp, scheming. "From Dad's coffers, naturally. After all, if Emma Cartwright perishes in a rock slide en route to Mexico, her share reverts to him. He can settle her last wishes." Stunned, quiet reigned. Even the breeze paused. Benjamin gaped at his daughter, pride mingling with awe. "You want to vanish," he said. "Emma dies lost in the wilds," she clarified. "Body unfound deserts swallow plenty. But her grieving dad upholds the pact." Voss nodded, impressed. "Smart. But him." He jabbed at Jack. "Loose end snag." "What loose end?" Emma countered. "Jack Harlan dies, two-gunned resisting. Cabin torched in the fray. Frontier hazards." Jack got it. She was freeing him by obliterating him, so they could vanish as one. "Dad." Emma softened, the child pleading once more. "Let me go with grace. Let me pick my end." Benjamin studied her, seeing the fierce woman he'd forged. At last, he dipped his head. "Boys, this never happened. Emma Cartwright and Jack Harlan perished here days ago. Rest his mop-up. 3 years on, in a valley near Portland, Oregon, where the Pacific mist softened everything green, a woman named Maria Lopez watched from her cozy farmhouse porch as her husband, Carlos, trained horses in the paddock. He moved with that same steady grace, though his hair was cropped, his hands smoother from year sand's rough living. To locals, he was a Latino newcomer wed to a widow with fertile acres and big plans. No one pride. In Oregon, reinvention was commonplace. The mail brought a note that morning, scripted in tidy English. "Dearest Maria, the venture thrives. Voss is content with his cut, though he inquires about his missing fiancée. I claim age clouds judgment. The crews praise the upgrade's wealth tames even magnates. I miss you. May the Northwest rains bring peace. Your steadfast ally be." Maria pocketed it near her heart, then strolled to Carlos, her palm on the gentle swell of her pregnancy. "Word for back east?" he asked, not glancing up. "From a contact," she said, propping on the rail. "Deal's solid." Carlos nodded, grasping the unsaid. They'd torch their pasts in a New Mexico blaze, guilts and griefs with them. What rose here was humbler, pure, theirs alone. The West whispered, "Lose it all to claim your truth. Die to live anew. Love repays any cost, even rebirth." They were unbound. They were united. They were rooted. And that trumped any empire or fortune the old life dangled. What do you think about this tale of forbidden love, betrayal, and second chances? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you side with Emma's bold escape, or think she should have honored her family's legacy? Share your stance, and let's debate.